Hey guys, Hashi here. I'd like to start this video with a bit of an anecdote. When I was in school, we had laptops in most of my classes, so when I would get done with my work, I would oftentimes decide to do something else, and because I'm a huge nerd, I would usually end up reading about subjects on Wikipedia, like dark matter. When I, or anyone else does this, we all sort of understand that while Wikipedia is a great starting point, it isn't the end-all be-all of knowledge. But despite that, we can figure out that if there was some groundbreaking discovery for dark matter, or a cure for cancer, it would be on the front page of Wikipedia. This is what we would call metacognition, where you are aware of what you know, aware of what you don't know, and also don't know what you don't know. In terms of knowledge, when it comes to tabletop gaming, there's nothing more iconic than cracking open a rulebook to really immerse yourself in the world. So iconic is this image that the survival game Grounded has replicated some of the books from Dungeons & Dragons to showcase the nerdy aptitude of the playable characters. Warhammer is no different from D&D in this regard, where the codex is often thought to be the definitive book for your faction. D&D may have the complete Book of Dwarves, but Warhammer has Codex Leagues of Votann or Battletome Caradon Overlords. And that should be all she wrote, but in recent times the purpose of the codex has gotten lost in the proverbial sauce, to the extent that I believe there is no real purpose for them any longer. For those who maybe don't know, a codex is a book that Games Workshop produces every edition for most factions, that is divided into three main sections: the lore, or the background for the faction, the painting, which gives you advice on how to paint your miniatures, and the rules for playing with said miniatures. Like I mentioned, many people are under the impression that the codex is the end-all be-all book for their faction, however I don't believe this is accurate. To start with, the reason most folks even buy a codex, the rules or crunch section, Warhammer as a game has undergone modernization in recent times, with frequent balance updates. This has progressed to the point where points values for units are now all contained on one page, allowing for easy updates. This has an unintended consequence that the point values printed in the book are more often than not out of date by the time anyone actually gets their codex. On the topic of getting codexes, I should note that 90% of the time the rules from the codex are leaked a month or so before the codex actually releases. This results in many lists being built before anyone actually is able to crack open a codex. Any additional units an army may receive throughout an edition would traditionally end up in a short-lived campaign book, but by the time we got to 9th edition, the fan backlash would cause its practice to be halted, and said units would have their rules published for free online. So the role of the codex for gameplay at least is obsolete, with the preferred format of rules for most folks being an online resource, be it an app or a website you totally should never visit. So the codex isn't even the ultimate authority on rules. Well, what about those other two parts of the codex? Well, painting is nice to have, but online tutorials are always going to be better than handfuls of photographs and text, especially for the more niche color schemes people will pick up. The codexes also never really did a good job discussing the technical details of paints, but that's a type of information you would find elsewhere anyways, so no, the codexes aren't the ultimate authority on painting either. This only leaves the lore or background section of the codex, and oh boy, it is the most spicy part to talk about by a wide margin. The lore neophytes and the people who pretend to be old fans may consider a codex a holy tome for their faction, and unfortunately for them, they would be wrong, since just about every codex is written from a wonky in-universe perspective. This is where facts we as a reader know are treated as hearsay. For example, the recent Black Templars Codex treats the Edict of Nicaea as if we don't know who issued it. Or in the Death Guard Codex, it pretends that Mortarian's pistol is a mystery. And before anyone says it's a heresy thing, the heresy rulebooks do the exact same thing. This should be a red flag for just about anyone, as this alleged primary source of lore for a faction is actively excluding information. Some people will say this is to add depth to the world, as having supposed mysteries makes the setting more interesting as a whole. And sure, not having a complete list of planets with details to fact check every time we get a new RPG booklet or kill team book is cool. This is not just the absence of detail to be filled in later. As we have seen with the Terminus Decree, people actively don't want the detail to even be there at all. This isn't a generalization, it is very easy to find old Reddit posts with actual theories about the Terminus Decree being shut down by the same sort of meta lore argumentation, where the reason the lore is being written is also the reason why you are wrong. In this case, the commenter explains that because Custodies didn't exist on tabletop yet in 5th edition, the Terminus Decree was just power leveling and isn't anything significant. I have also seen people ask, well, if the Terminus Decree was also allegedly revealed in The End and the Death, why weren't people as mad then? I suspect it's because no one really reads the novels to begin with. Not that anyone takes novel quotes seriously to begin with. See, in this community, people seem to love to throw around the term unreliable narrator as a sort of panacea for just about any issue. So if a lore blurb pops up that you don't like, just say the book was using an unreliable narrator, so we don't know if it's actually true. This is a butchering of the literary tool. In academia, it is described as a way to give more context to the character via clashing perspectives. So if a non-claustrophobic person thinks a space is restrictive, it would show that a claustrophobic person's statements are justified and would heighten the drama. Going back to the codex for a moment, what does it tell us when a codex narrator doesn't know that Deimos was a moon of Mars? Sure, you could say it tells us the average Imperial citizen might not know about Deimos, but why are we assuming the codex narrator is an average Imperial citizen? The codex narrator is never really defined as an actual character, and because of that, the usage of unreliable narrator is wasted on them, as it tells us nothing. The other reason for this weird standard of evidence regarding the codex relates back to the beginning of the video with metacognition. People assume for whatever reason that they know what they don't know. Not in the sense that they are all-knowing, but they are aware of what they do not know. So when they hear something like a novel featured something extraordinary, like a Man of Iron confirming the machine god isn't the Emperor, or Martian adepts seeing the Void Dragon itself, they have to cope and try to say that these events didn't actually happen. Why? Because if they did, they surely would have known about it. I hope you see the issue here. It is like that one meme, the myth of consensual lore, where everybody besides Reddit is consenting. GW seems to want to talk about these things. A lot of folks really like reading about it, but Reddit has deemed the characters are all lying, so it fits their narrative. I keep saying Reddit because this sort of pseudo-intellectual crab bucket stuff is just peak Reddit, and it is also something that many people who pretend to be old lore fans also do. So despite all their flaws, the codexes do contain some new lore, right? Surely that would be the reason you buy them, for the lore update that will actively ignore other information. Well, that segues into the last issue. The codexes since the end of 8th edition have been physical only. This is also an issue that plagues some novels where they are released several months early as a scalper's edition, and the only way you can hear about them is through the lens of an egotistical redditor. Codexes though are seemingly more skimmed than novels, as the new lore points are actively talked about pretty quickly once someone gets their mitts on a codex, as opposed to the novels. With the novels, it's pretty obvious most folks are operating under the same couple of lore summaries that everybody else is reading. So to recap, the codexes, which are the most read format of the lore, actively pretend core plot points are unknown, and when they do solve a plot point, people complain because they assume said lore plot point was this unassailable mystery box despite there never being any implication it wasn't solved in a novel earlier. So what is my proposed solution to the problem? Well, we make the codexes as a physical book more of a collector's item, like how the novels are basically all collector's items. Then, the same codex is sold online as a PDF with some erratas, just like the Cubicil 7 RPG books. With this, we have solved the prevailing issues of the codex. I do think the books need to be more intelligent about what they pretend is unknown. Age of Sigmar's 4th edition went even farther than 40k, as Age of Sigmar's core rulebook is now made up of segments from in-universe books, but at least the visual direction is different, and because Age of Sigmar is so much newer than 40k, there isn't much time to hide stuff away in random Imperial Guard novels. The prediction I am going to make to cap off this video is that the upcoming Dark Eldar Codex is going to have a lore plot point that polarizes the community, and I am also going to wager that anybody who's read Path of the Dark Eldar won't care. Anyways guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.